Amadwa, Panyua, Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Blessing of the new moon. Barakata Yahweh, Basham, Yahusha, Yashara, Nathan Lanawe, Hakadash, Bashalawam, the water, Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the new moon in peace. Thank you, Sophia. The Aliyah Ma'ash, Shariah Machad, Psalms 121. Anya Harayim, Ayim Ya, Oh Harim, Mayan, Yabawa Azaria, Yabawa Mayahu, Shai Shai, Shemayim, Warataza, La Yanathan, Lamawat, Ragalia, Yela Yanawam, Shashramarka, Hanab, La Yanawam. Wala Yashan Shashramar Yashrele Yahweh Shemaryeb Yahweh Tazaliet Ayu Ya Yim Yim Ya Yawamam Hashemash La Kaya Wayarak La Balayela Yahweh Yashemaria Makal Ra Yashamar Na Pasha Yahuwah Yashamar Hawalakya Wabawaya My Fat Will Aid I will Basham Yahushai the water Aman. Psalms 121, a song of degrees. I will lift up mine eyes into the hills from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth, and even forevermore. Amen. Shema Yasharallah, Hero Israel. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allah Yahweh, Yahweh Echad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allah Yahweh, Yahweh Echad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allah Yahweh, Yahweh Echad. Deuteronomy 6 and 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Amen. Tapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abiyanawa Shabbat Shemayim Kodash Hayya Shamka Yahweh Malakwavkat Taba'a Ratazawanka Hayya Aisha Baratazab Kabashamayim Lathananawa Lakham Yawam Zad Wasalaknawa Kabawaknawa Kasalaknawa Kabawak Yanawa Wala Abiyarnawa O Messiah one Albo Hawashinawa Murai Kaya Laka Hamalakwaf Wa Allah Wa Thaparat Wa Iwalam Aman. Matthew 6 and 9. After this manner, therefore, pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Ha'ai Shara Matazawa, the Ten Commandments. La'ad, Yahayat, La'kad, Alahayim, Akarim, Alapanyat, La'ad, the Aishad, Lakab, Pasod, Wala'ad, the Ibadam, La'ad, Thalakwakath, Shumwed, Yahweh, Alahayaka, Lashawat, Zakar, Ath, Hayawam, Hashabath, Lakodashwad, Kabad, Abiyaka, Wa Amaka, La'ad, Tharatazak, La'ad, Thana'ap, La'ad, Thaganab, La'ad, Tha'inad, Shakur, La'ad, Thachamad, Ko, Asherad, Lara'ika, Aman. Exodus 20:3. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. Thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. And rested the seventh day, wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen. Yeshabwa, be seated. Barakatha Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asheran Athananawa, Parya Gapan, Thawada Aman, La, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Af, Yasher Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Amadwa, Panyawa, Yerushalayim, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakatha Yahweh, Haggadah, Rakawam, Abiyar, Wanawa'ah, Eliyawan, Malak, Shal, Shamayim, Warataza, Wakal, Dabarium, Kayayim, Wagam, Hamashayak, Mayahawa, Adawanawa, Ahabnawa, Apulat, Yawaitaza, Yahawashai, Zakarnawa, Yahawa, Bartazawan, Ainka, Yashala, Zarnawa, Banat, Wasap, Yashala, Oh, Nanawa, Yum Yum, Aifta, Kayawamyam, Makwadam, Babakosha, Shalak, Maika Allah, Watazawadak, Alahayam, La, Maganawa, Raparnawa, Washamar, Ilnawa, by Kwar, Shalak, Haroka Shao Yahweh Shai La Nawa La Madnawa Rabiam Kakama Thabawana Wada If Shao the Barka Basham Yahweh Shai the Wada Thum Yad Why Willam Aman. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, and wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember, shower favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, most high, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, always and forever. So be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the law. Barakatha Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Natan Lanawa, Hatawarak. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakatha Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Natan Lanawa, Awar, Lara Awak. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the ram's horn, the call of the people. Barakatha Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Natan Lanawa, Quran, Hayo, La Korah, Ha'ain, Yeshabwa. Be seated. I had to do that too. And the snow still gets in between the cracks. Okay, so Shalom Yasharala. So Shalom everybody here in Philly. Shalom everybody watching on live stream, and Shalom everyone listening in on teleconference. Welcome to Asher Kanas, or the Congregation of Israel, where we teach that the so-called descendants of slaves, as well as the indigenous peoples found in North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean mainly, make up the southern and northern kingdoms of the lost tribes of Israel. Once lost, now found. We fall into a lower state, politically, economically, and religiously, because we broke the laws of God found in the Bible given to us by Moses. And we come out as lower state that we fall into as a people by turning back to these commandments we broke by following Jesus Christ as our example, who in the scriptures tells us what? He did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth, right? So that's the example we try to align ourselves to. As it also tells you in Hebrews, right? He was fashioned as flesh, just like how we are, yet without sin. So if he can do it, if he can be in a fleshly body like this, subject to temptation and resist, we can do the same. One way we do that is by keeping the new moon holy, which is today. So we'll just read a couple new moon scriptures, and then I'll get a couple scriptures pertaining to some prophecy that's happening that we want to keep an eye out for, and we want to have a sneak peek into. Because what the Most High has shown us gives us a insight and foresight into what's coming, and to be able to position ourselves accordingly, right? So that we don't fall into the traps that the world will fall into, even though they think that they're ahead because of whatever knowledge they may have, either through technology or through mysticism, spiritual wickedness, or a combination of both. You know, a lot of people doing a lot of things out of fear, out of desperation, as things get worse and worse. That's why it tells us this in the scriptures. I'll read these two real quick before we get our basic new moon scriptures. This is in Proverbs. Both these verses pretty much say the same thing. But Proverbs 22 in verse 3. If you could read that, Manashah, Babakosha, we would appreciate it. Proverbs 22 in verse 3.
Proverbs 22 and 3. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hid of himself, but the simple pass on and they are punished.
Right. So a prudent man or a wise man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. Also, same book, go to chapter 27 and verse 12. Read that too, Baba Kushan. 12.
Proverbs 27 and 12. The prudent man foreseeth the evil and hid himself, but the simple pass on and are punished.
Right, so same thing. Sometimes you'll see certain proverbs or psalms repeated, but it's all good because we got the lesson. If you missed it the first time, you got it here. Just like a lot of laws going back to the first 5 books, you'll see them in one place, then they pop up again. If we find the 10 Commandments, for example, in Exodus 20, we also find the 10 Commandments in Deuteronomy 5. So the Most High will repeat things because what? We were a nation that forgot and forgets, right? We always make that joke, right? Even got a tribe of Israel, right? Whose name means name to forget, who's your namesake, right? Which, when Joseph gave him that name, his eldest son, you know, the Most High even gives the context behind why he would give his eldest son Manasseh that name, or in the Hebrew, Manashah. So yeah, we've forgotten, but now it's time to wake up. Now it's time to zakar, or remember. Let's move this real quick. All right, so let's remember this new moon real quick. Let's get to a key verse in Numbers. Numbers chapter 10 and verse 10. You can read that, Baba Kushan. Numbers chapter 10 and verse 10.
Numbers chapter 10, verse 10.
Mhm.
Also in the day of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginnings of your months, he shall blow with the trumpet over your burnt offering and over the sacrifice of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for a memorial before your God. I am the Lord your God.
Right. So let's answer our questions, right, as we read this. Who's talking to who? It's the Most High talking to Moses and telling Moses what to do, right, as it pertains to the people, our people. He's saying, in the day of your gladness, so that's the when, and in your solemn days, and also in the beginnings of your months, which is what we're in right now, right? The new moon. So that's when. But what are you supposed to do at this time, right? It says, ye shall blow with the trumpets over your burnt offerings, right? So that's what we're doing. This being an example of a type of trumpet, shawapar in the ancient Hebrew, but you'll hear the so-called Jews with the added vowel sounds. They'll say shofar. But then we also would make trumpets out of, like we see today, out of different minerals, right? That's why trumpets are part of what they call the brass section, right? Of a band or a concert or something, something like that. It's considered a brass instrument. That's what you read in the second verse of this same chapter, right? We will make trumpets out of silver, for example. So we would do that over our burnt offerings and also over the sacrifices of our peace offerings. That's what we did to what? Commune with the Most High, or to get some kind of expiation for sin, right? We didn't go through Christ as of yet, but we were doing this at this time. And we'll do this again in the kingdom. But right now we're going through Christ as what? We've fallen far away. And now the Most High through Christ is allowing us back in through mercy. So now we have to get our rehearsal on point. We got to rehearse the righteous acts and get ready before Christ comes back. Then it says, why? That they may be to you for memorial before your God. This is why we do it. So we got when we do it, we got what we're supposed to do, and now we got why we're doing it. That it may be to you for memorial before your God. So that we remember why this is important. And we do it every time it comes around. So anytime Israel is anywhere and they have knowledge, they should be keeping this, whether it was back then or now. So that's why we keep this now in these times too. And finally, I'm the Lord your God, which he is and always will be. So let's get our forefathers keeping this new moon or this beginning of the months, because we just read beginning of the month. We didn't see the word new moon. So someone might read this and go, well, hold on. It just says beginning of the month. Why are you saying that's when the moon is dark? I don't see it here. So let's get another scripture to prove that. Like the scripture in Isaiah 28 says, right? Precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line upon line, here a little and there a little, right? Isaiah 28, 9 and 10 is a reference I'm making. Don't get it, but that's the verse that we always use anytime we teach the class or do a service or go out to camp or counsel somebody. That's the verse that we apply. So let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 20 now to see an example of our forefathers keeping this. 1 Samuel chapter 20. In verse 5. If you can read that, Baba Kushar.
1 Samuel chapter 20 and verse 5. And David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at even.
Right. So this is during the time of King Saul's reign. David, right, who's his armor bearer, is telling Jonathan, who's King Saul's son, that what? Tomorrow is the new moon. So the day that they're in right now, the next day will be the new moon. He says, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. So he would normally sit down with him, especially during the time of a feast, like the new moon. But he says, but let me go, that I might hide myself in the fields until the third day even. So he's telling Jonathan what he's going to do and for how long, right? Why is he doing this? You read above, previously in the chapter, Saul seeks his life. Because Saul didn't obey the Most High, the Most High took the spirit from him and put him on David. And then Most High has an evil spirit troubling Saul. So Saul now seeks after David's life without a cause, right? And even Jonathan brings this to his attention as you read on in the chapter. But let's just focus on the new moon part. So stay in the chapter. Go to verse 24 so we can see the plan now being executed. And read that.
Samuel 20 and 24. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat.
Right, just like David said, just like they normally do, they would come and sit down and keep this feast. Right? They would even sit down for dinner, regularly if they weren't out at war or something or doing something else. But they would definitely come together during the feast. Right? So the king is there. And this king being King Saul, Jonathan's father. So read on in verse 25.
Verse 25. And the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, even upon his seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty.
Right. So it says the king, King Saul, sat upon his seat as at other times, as they normally would sit there in that room where they dined, even upon a seat by walls. Even tells you where he would sit, in a seat by the wall. Who was there? It says Jonathan was there, and Abner was there too. Who was Abner? If you're going to Abner, he was Saul's first cousin, but he was also what? His captain of the host. Captain of those, like being the equivalent of like your top general, your head over the army, right? But it says David's place was empty. So we know reading the story why he's not there. But Saul doesn't know, right? So let's see what he thinks. Read verse 26.
Verse 26. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something had been falling him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean.
Right. So it says, nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something had befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. So the issue is, who? David, what? Didn't come to the feast. So Saul's wondering why he's not there. So he makes the assumption something must have befallen him. He's not clean. Surely he's not clean. Because when we're unclean for any reason, be it a man or a woman, right? You're not supposed to come together for a holy gathering. So that's what Saul thinks, which is pretty normal because that's usually why if someone normally comes to a feast and they don't come, it's usually for that reason. And they weren't strangers to that themselves, right? Especially if they're, just being a man or woman and how you become unclean by different means. And then going out to a war oftentimes too will let it also be a thing because when you come back from a slaughter, right, and you're victorious, you're dealing with dead bodies, right? You're dealing with corpses, like you'll see that sometimes in movies or reading history where after they finish a battle, to go around the battle and make sure everybody's finished, right? So, oh, this one's still moving. Oh, but this one have his misery, right? At least, that's that would be cordial, right? Whereas some soldiers, they'll grab up survivors that are in pain and cause me even more pain, right? Twist the blade, right? Or say, oh, we're gonna, this guy can still breathe, right? He's only got half his intestines hanging out. Let's take him over here and do something worse to him, right? Typically, you want to put soldiers out of their misery after a battle's fought. So that makes you unclean, right? So they weren't strangers to being unclean. So they couldn't come to every feast, especially if you're always going to war. What makes you wicked is, being overzealous and saying, I'm going to go anyway because the Most High's feast. Rather come to the holy place. The Most High said, don't do that. If you're unclean, just stay behind until the time. Whether it's a one-day uncleanness or a whole week, as far as whatever the cause is.
You're not righteous over much.
Exactly. So then 27 is important because this is where we connected with Numbers 10 and 10, where it just says the beginning of your month, which based on how we've been raised here in the West, right, in the United States, you think the beginning of the month is what? February 1st, March 1st, April 1st, May 1st. Maybe, but not necessarily. It just so happened that they sync up around this time. But when you look at the lunar calendar versus the solar calendar, each lunar month is slightly shorter than a solar month, right? Like we had that thing they taught us in school, right? 30 days have September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, excepting February, right? The song they taught us in school. If you look at the moon is on average 29 and a half days, right? So that's the average length of a lunar month, 29 and a half days, which means you're going to have some days left over compared to the solar month. That's why you look at a new moon calendar, right? And we'll be putting out the new ones pretty soon, right? And check it just to make sure all the holy days are in the proper season. So we'll make sure we confirm whether or not we need to add a 13th month or not for the following year. What you'll see is that what? The day of the new moon will become an earlier day in the month. So right now we're keeping the new moon at the end of January, right? 31st. But then what you'll see is for February, it'll be like the 28th. But then when you get to March, it might be like the 29th, right? As you get further down, because February is a short month, as you get from April to May to June, it'll be like what? March 29th, April 28th, May 27th, June 25th, July 24th, August 23rd. It'll keep going up in the solar month. Keep doing that until we get to a time like we have right now where we got a new moon in the beginning of the solar month, beginning of January, which we had during the feast week, and we have a new moon at the end of January as well, right? So that's because of the different total days. Once again, lunar month being on average 29 and a half days, whereas solar calendar is typically what? 30 to 31 days. So that's why you'll see that date get earlier and earlier in the solar month, but we're still just keeping the new moon. So that's how you rectify that. That's how you reconcile that, because it might be confusing how we grew up keeping months versus how we now are learning to keep months according to the lunar calendar. Yeah, it's so funny because when we talked, when he was here before, I think I saw him on a Wednesday, and I said, yeah, it's always a test anytime it rains or snows heavy to see if the job was done. So I'm guessing Saturday you didn't see that. Okay. So read verse 27 after I said all that. Read verse 27. This is going to let us know the beginning of the month, Numbers 10 and 10, what the beginning of the month is.
Verse 27. And it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month, that David's place was empty.
Right. So right there, it came to pass on the morrow, right? Which the previous day was the new moon. It says, which was the second day of the month. So right there, it lets you know that we talk about the beginning of the months in the scriptures, like Numbers 10 and 10 says, according to what we're reading here in 1 Samuel 20, it's talking about the new moon. So there's no confusion. Are we looking at the solar calendar that we use now, that was instituted? No, we're using the lunar calendar here to keep the time a month. So it says, when it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month, that what? Or who? David, his place was empty. So once again, we know why, but Saul doesn't. But Jonathan knows, because that's what him and David agreed to.
So how many days they were celebrating the new moon for?
Oh, just one day.
So what, they getting together on the second day? It says on the second day the sea was empty.
Right. That's why in verse 25 it says the king sat upon his seat as at other times. So they came together for holy days, but then they would also just sit down and eat because at this point David was part of his household. Because when you read the laws of the king in 1 Samuel 8, one thing that a king could do, he can go throughout the land, right, amongst all the tribes, and then call your sons and daughters to work for his office. It tells you that he can make your sons become like soldiers in his army, right? But it says you can call your daughters to be like bakers and confectionaries, like doing things that will support the king's court. So David was one of these figures. And of course, it makes sense since Saul put the challenge out there for Goliath, and he answered the cause. So he said, wow, okay, I want to give you a special place. I want to make you my armor bearer, right? So anywhere Saul would go, David would be there to bear his armor, right? So that's like a cheap position when you work that or serve that role for Saul, who was the king. That's why he's in the house with them.
It's like that respect. Like you know, some families they eat together every night, right? So it's like you don't show up. It's like man, we didn't see Manny on the first day. All right, something must have happened. And second day come, oh man, it's 2 days in a row. He not here eating with us. Something's up, right? Because you always expect it to be there, especially on a holy day. And then like when it's more than one day goes by, it's like something's up. And then I agree. You part of the king's court. Everybody should be accounted for.
You don't just show up. It's like you get it. Today, to look at modern day Babylon, you get a gig at the White House. You don't be showing up any old time to the White House meetings, right? It's like, Esau will be like, oh my God, it's the president. It's the vice president. It's the head of the Department of Defense. You don't show up late. This happens again, you're out of here. It's a big deal. So same thing for times past, right? Whether it was Nehemiah, because remember he was in Darius' court, he was his cupbearers, he was a similar thing. Daniel and his 3 friends, they were working in the government too. So it wasn't just like, now you see me, now you don't. Whatever. That was serious business.
Even like, you've been in corporate before, they have certain luncheons and things like that where, especially if you're a person who, is important or is like a key figure and you don't show up, it's like, yo, where's this guy at? We ain't see him, right? Because you expected to be there. If you're not there, then it's like, the conspiracy theories start coming out. Just like Saul is doing, right? It's like, he must be unclean. Or the next time I was like, what the heck, always conspiracy theories start coming out.
Khan. He gave him the benefit of the doubt because he knew him to be a righteous man. Like you said, 2 days in a row. Now I suspect something. And as far as the proof, we don't really read it often, but we could read it now since we're talking about it. The proof on that whole thing as far as the power of the king. Real quick, go to 1 Samuel chapter 8. Let's read the section. It's pretty straightforward. We'll read from 10 down to 18, and we'll move on to the next scripture. Samak, if you could read that, Baba Kushah.
1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 10. And it says, and Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked of him a king. And he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you.
Right. So you read above, Samuel has sons. His sons are wicked, unfortunately, right? Even though his father set a righteous example. So you can't have that happen. And the people said, give us a king like unto the other nations that be around us. Right? So this is what they wanted. So Samuel was a little, distraught, frustrated about it, right? Because he's like, why? We got the Most High, right? What's the big deal? We got his law. But the Most High is going to tell Samuel, no, it's okay. capitulate, hear them out. This is what they want. I'll give it to them. And this goes even back to Moses, because the Most High already knew this day was coming anyway. But he's saying, look, now that you want to have a king, tell Israel this.
He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots.
Right. So David would be like an example of this, right? Where he went to Jesse, right, of Judah, to his house and was like, yeah, I want your boys to come work for me. Because remember, before even David was there, he already had David's older brothers in his army, right? I think it tells you that Eliab, which was David's eldest brother, and like I think his second eldest, his name began with an S. I can't remember it, but I think it was like his top 2 or 3 sons were already in Saul's army, so they couldn't just refuse the king, right? This is what comes with that, right? He has this power, so you wanted a king, all right. You can't be like, oh, I don't want to fight, but it's like, but the king needs soldiers, and if he calls you into service, you got to come.
It says, and he will appoint him captains over thousands and captains over 50s, and he will set them to ear his ground and to reap his harvest and to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots.
Right. So now to support the court, he's going to have them deal in agriculture, right? Deal in husbandry, have them grow things, right? Whether it be an orchard or growing things in the field, right? Set them to be farmers to grow things for him and for his court. And then it also says to make instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. So now some of them will also be made into smiths of different kinds, right? Whether it be goldsmith, silversmith, ironsmith, right? Blacksmith pretty much being the same as an ironsmith because the metal was dark, right? So yeah, he'll have you become a craftsman, right? To build things to support the king and his army. Read on.
And he will take your daughters to be his confectionaries and to be cooks and to be bakers.
Right. So now he'll even call your daughters to service, right? But not so much to go into battle, warfare, but to be confectionaries, to be cooks, and to be bakers, right? So to pretty much work the kitchen and dealing with when it comes to culinary arts, everything that pertains to that, right? So the court can be, well fed and nourished and taken care of, right? For just solemn days or even high-end occasions, right? And it's crazy because you look at our captivity, especially in this modern time, we see pretty much how the other nations have done this to us, right? Especially here in America, right? Where on the plantation, right? They would have, the men and women working at different capacities on the plantation, right? Where there was in the South or even up in the North, because people don't talk about that enough. But you go into places even like Boston, New York, right? You have plantations there too. It wasn't just down south, but you would have us working in these different capacities. This is talking about, when we were a sovereign nation, how we would work for ourselves, that the king's court will require these things too, and require this of the sons and daughters throughout the land. Read 14.
And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants.
Right. So your possession, whatever tribe you are, whatever plot of land you have, however good it is, right? He can require that of you, right? A certain portion of it to go towards him. It's going to tell you how much. Read on.
It says, and he will take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants.
So that should already be familiar to us, right? Because a tenth already went to Levi, right? Because remember, Levi didn't have any inheritance, but a tenth of all Israel went to them to support them, because you had Levi in different cities throughout, right? Wherever you were at in Israel, there was a Levite that you could go to for advice, for counsel, for instruction, right? To deal with certain matters, right? So they were all over, right? Think of them like as a franchise. Like how we have franchises today, where it's like no matter what city you go to, you can find a certain franchise, right? That provides certain food, certain products or certain services. So Levi played that role. And it's funny because even Esau will tell you when it comes to the whole franchise model of business, they'll tell you that, oh yeah, it comes from the Catholic Church and the diocese that they set up throughout, right? Because you get the archdiocese, but you get the lower archdiocese in different cities, right? whether it's North America, whether it's different islands in the Caribbean, right? Wherever you go in the world, you'll find these dioceses of the Catholic Church, especially where we're at, right? And we're there in ignorance, sitting down there looking up at the statues and, worshiping the host of heaven, not realizing. But now those all, you pretty much know what to expect no matter which diocese you go to. So same thing with Levi. When you went to Levi, you knew what to expect when it came to what they will be saying and what they will be doing as it pertained to the law. So same as we provided them a tenth, now the king in his office, his court, can require a tenth also. So now that's 20%, right? That goes towards Levi and that goes towards now the king, right? So everything has a price, right? Everything has a cost. It says in verse 16,
And he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your asses and put them to his work.
right? So pretty much put them to work in whatever capacity he needs. Read on.
He will take the tenth of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants.
Right. So not just the your plants that you grow, but also your animals that you rear up. He can require a tenth, right, to maintain them. Mm-hmm. And finish it up in 18.
And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen you. And the Lord will not hear you in that day.
Right. So it's like, it's what you wanted. This is what you're going to get. And then as you read down, of course, Israel, you know how Israel is. They'll hear it and they'll say, yeah, we still want to give it to us. So that's what happened there. So that's that history on that. But yeah, 1 Samuel 8 talks about that, among other things. But yeah, as far as the new moon is concerned, though, but like I said, it's good just to know that history and even to consider it when we look at things going on right now in, modern day Babylon / Egypt / Sodom, right? Esau at the helm. When we talk about the solutions being found in the Most High's laws, we really want to ask that question as Israelites, but from a righteous spirit. Like you have in the world, right? You got those bumper stickers. What would Jesus do? Right? It's kind of a joke, right? So what would Jesus do? Ha ha ha. But we really want to ask that question. Wow, okay. When we see these things happening, whether it be domestic issues, right? Different types of domestic issues, whether it be social issues or issues dealing with the economy, issues between different nations, right? Going to war with each other and all that. The question we want to ask is Israel, learning about what it means to be the judges of the earth. That's the role we're supposed to play. We're supposed to be the chief communicators, the chief decision makers. And they're just supposed to come to us for counsel on how to do that and to do that well. We got to look at these different current affairs, like I said, that either happen locally or abroad, and say, well, how would we deal with this? How would we deal with this matter according to the law, right? And that's a constant exercise you can do. Right? That's a way you can actually use the, news as such a downer, right? Every time you turn on the news, and say, oh, all right, that happened. Oh, man. All right, what does the scripture say about that, right? How we deal with this according to the scriptures. So you can turn into, an exercise, a teaching exercise, as opposed to just watching, current events and just, getting in the dumps. Going, oh, man, this sick, sad world. I can't wait. Oh, like our people in the world talking about, oh, we can't wait for better days, for clear skies. We'll get through this too. Us knowing the truth, realizing you might get a breather here and there, but no, it's not going to get better. So also concerning the new moon, let's go to a future prophecy that hasn't been fulfilled yet. Let's go to Isaiah 66. Isaiah chapter 66. Last chapter of Isaiah. Let's read verse 23. Yeah, the law is interesting to where everything in there isn't explicitly said when it comes to different matters that come up. That was the case even then as opposed to now. But with wisdom, right, one can go into the law and come to conclusions, right, that may not be explicitly said. Like I always like to use the parallel when we talk about things in nature, right? Like things we see or things we hear, for example, right? When it comes to things we see, 7 colors, right, that are part of the rainbow, right? Word G bib, as they taught us. Now, when you recombine those colors in different ways, you can give rise to endless palettes, right? Endless paintings, right? Beyond measure. But still just using that base of 7 colors. Going to music, same idea. 7 basic notes, right? On a scale, right? On a what they call an octave. And you have 12 total when you go on the chromatic scale, right? Where you have the sharps and flats and all that. But just 7 notes, but you take those notes and recombine them in different ways, you can give rise to endless compositions without number, right? There'll always be a new song, right? No matter what. It may sound like a song that came before, but it'll still be its own song, right? If it's not exactly the same, when you change it up. The Most High's law is the same thing, same idea. You have a finite number of laws, just over 600. But by recombining those laws in different ways, you give rise to an endless plethora of wisdom, knowledge, and insight, even though it's a finite number of laws. Because our people, oftentimes in the heathen especially, they want to put the law of God in a box, the Bible in a box, and go, oh, that old thing, right? We can't use that anymore. That's not useful anymore. When we know the Most High's wisdom is ageless, timeless, right? It's always up to date, right? There's no need for it to evolve. As Esau likes to sell us this idea of, us evolving and getting somewhere further and beyond where we were before.
It's funny because, as I sit here and think about it, usually that narrative, people say that, it reminds me of, so many contradictions in the Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, okay, well, show me one, right? What contradiction that you find in the Bible? But that same thing, like, oh, the Bible's outdated. It's like, okay, well, show me where there's certain laws that doesn't apply to right now. Like, which one that you read that really does not apply, right? And it may say, like, for putting people to death and things like that. Oh, well, okay, that's done away with. Christ is up to sacrifice. So we don't do that anymore, right? It's not lawful to do that. It tells you in the New Testament you can't do it, right? Be the powers that be. So what is it, right? Love thy neighbor. And like that's not good. Right? That should not steal, right? Adultery, these things is not applicable to right now. And then when you start going into it, right, you realize that it's just the fear of wanting to be held accountable for certain things that is in there that you just don't want to be held accountable. You just want to be free from, right? That's what it boils down to. There's too many rules in there. We need to get rid of some of those rules to allow us to live freely, right? That's what happened.
Somebody says that about, you mentioned things like the killing. He said, that's happening every day now. That's why, is that what BLM's in the street say Black Lives Matter? It's happening every day right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or because not explicitly when someone commits a sin, they go and stone you to death. But it's being done in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you still have certain states that still do capital punishment. That's rough.
Right.
So
There you go. But once again, anytime you mention the Bible's laws as a means to do government, that's where you get into the, what we're taught in school here in the States, right? Separation of church and state, right? Well, it sounds good in theory, but it never happens. It never really legitimately happens. Because even in a court of law, whatever level you're at, the judge, whoever he or she is, they're going to be coming from some sort of morality that's oftentimes tied to some kind of spiritual, religious belief. Even though they say separation of church and state.
But is the how hypocritical they are, because anytime a public official is being sworn in, what did they swear on? They don't open it, but why they swear on the Bible? If it was to separate church and state.
Good
Why are you
point.
swearing on the Bible?
Good point. Good point. Whatever that book is, right? They say that Bible they swear on is like supposed to be like, it's a Bible, but it's like,
It's a Bible cover.
yeah. Or one of the
the Bibles they have has a lot of other stuff, like the stuff that they're into on the left-hand side, So it's like, can we get a closer look at that Bible, see what you guys actually really swearing on, like what that book actually is? Because you start going into, what they do behind closed doors, going back when they founded the country. You see, like once we were saying before, you see a lot of customs that the founding fathers were into that go back to what Hamites were doing, right? From Egypt, the Egyptians, to the Babylonians, right? To Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And they're incorporating these things into their, current mystery schools that they got initiated into, right? Whether it was the Hellfire Club or the Rosicrucians or the Freemasons, Skull and Bones, look at the stuff that they're into, the stuff that they do. And you find those same things that the Hamites were doing when they were the top empires. It's just like, wow, is that where that comes from? You go into the Bible, makes it very clear. Oh, daughter of Babylon. Oh, okay, makes sense. Oh, spiritual Sodom, spiritual Egypt. Take a look around, right? Even on the surface, you can see it, right? From the Washington Monument, right? To the back of the dollar bill, right? To the Christmas tree on the White House lawn, to the Christmas tree in Rockefeller, Plaza. So it's like, who are these guys really? What are these guys really into? One nation under God. Which God is that? Which gods are that, right? So yeah, they get exposed. All you got to do is just use this book. You can expose everything that they're up to. And like we were saying earlier, you get a sneak peek into what's to come so you can position yourself accordingly and be ready. But now Isaiah 66, verse 23, if you could read that, Kahan, Manashah, Baba Kushah, Isaiah 66 and 23. Once again, this is a future prophecy.
Isaiah 66 and 23. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, said the Lord.
Khan. So it says, it shall come to pass, meaning it's something that hasn't happened yet. So that's the when. It also says, from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, that's another when. So when new moons come and go, when Sabbaths come and go, in this day that hasn't come yet, what's going to happen? Or who's the subject? It says all flesh. What's all flesh going to do? Come to worship before who? The Most High. You see that? So you got God's people, us, doing the right thing, but then we're going to be the rulers in the earth, which means we're going to command other nations to do this, and then us having rule or dominion over the fowls of the air, the beasts and the creeping thing in the earth, and the fish of the sea. We'll leave them alone too, just like you see with the heathen. They won't even let the animals do what it's supposed to, or even the land itself rest when it's supposed to. Well, us in power, they'll all get to keep the Sabbath, right? Like the Most High even makes fun of us, not like say makes fun, but kind of comes at us. And you read like say like in Leviticus where it says, the land shall enjoy her Sabbaths, right? Talking about what? Us getting removed out of there because of the curse. It's at least now that I've removed my people from my land, now the land can enjoy her Sabbaths, because when you were there, you put that law behind you. You don't want to let the land rest. You wanted to work the land and work it some more. Now as a punishment, I'm going to take you out the land. I'm going to have you working for somebody else who I don't care about, who's like you were saying earlier, Khan, they're like a spit to me. I'm going to have you work for them, and they're going to have you work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, right? During their so-called holidays, because if you just followed me, I would have gave you time off. I would have gave you time to relax, to rest, and it would have been according to nature, according to the creation, where I set it up. So now here's your judgment. So now Most High is merciful. He's going to allow what? This to come back, this righteousness to come back, and to us, we'll be the ones to administer it. Like he told Christ, ask of me, I'll give you the heathen for thine inheritance and uttermost coast for thy possession. And then later on, Paul writes what? Heirs of God, joint heirs with Christ. And then John says later on what? Repeating what it says in the Psalms, whosoever shall endure unto the end, right? Keep these sayings. Him will I give power over the nations, right? So we want to be a part of that inheritance. We want to rule with Christ in the kingdom. And the way to do it is by doing this right now, right? We should be doing this already, from one new moon to another and from one Sabbath to another. Right? We're the ones that are ahead of the curve, right? We're the ones that are in the know before everyone else. Like we read earlier about the wise man foreseeing the evil and hiding himself. We do that now by keeping the new moon, keeping the Sabbath days and other laws, because we see what's coming. We know that's the only protection that we have from the destruction that's at hand. And let's go even into the New Testament, where we can see that Paul, without having to go through all type of detail, he had to put this verse, he had to put this in a letter, to the brothers and sisters in Colossae, just as a reminder, saying, look, you guys are supposed to be doing this. Paul was always one to address his audience accordingly, right? He wouldn't beat you on the head with what you knew, but he would talk about or focus on the things that you didn't know, or the things that you weren't saying and doing that were right. But then he would give you props on the things that you did say and do right. Totally makes sense. I know I'm quite fond of doing that anytime we're out teaching. I'll always kind of put it out there like, look, brother, sister, stranger, we're not here to preach to the wise, right? But we're out here to fill in the gaps, right? Because we can kind of go back and forth, all day long and be like, yeah, the Bible says this. Yeah. The Bible says this. Yeah. The Bible says this. Yeah. Okay, I got to go. Now that person thinks in their mind, I already got the knowledge. I'm already saved. So it's up to us to know where people will tend to have those dark spots when it comes to the truth, kind of comes to the light of God, and honing on those things, right? Ask those big questions first, which more times than not, we know are going to be something they didn't know, right? Like 4 major ones that we always like to point out are like, we'll just say it. When you read the Bible, didn't you know that when you read the Bible, Joseph and Mary had sex to have Christ? Yeah. But more times than not, you're going to get that, right? Or
I thought it was about to say blasphemous.
right, exactly. Right? You got to hit those heavy hitters first. Or like, what's another one? Did you know, according to the Bible, that Satan wasn't kicked out of heaven, that he goes back and forth all the time? What? No, they fought even before Adam and Eve. They fought, and then he was kicked out of heaven. Right? They're loosely quoting Revelations, but they don't understand what that's actually talking about. So you show them in Job, for example. Look, he's up in the third heaven talking to the Most High. They're not yelling at each other. They're just having a civil discussion. And they're like, wow, well, albeit it does say that. Wait a minute. Right? Or if we're reading it, they can't see it. What's that book? What's that chapter? Right? Anytime you get that, you go, oh, got you there.
The top one is Christ on the king for Israel.
Yeah. I was going to say the December 25th is still a big one too. You would think a lot of people by now would know. You would say like, December 25th. People think that's birth of Christ. You read in the Bible, Christ wasn't born December 25th. He was born in the springtime at least. Because it tells you they were doing things that you would only do in the warmer season. And it's just like, really? But, sometimes you'll hear people be somewhat familiar with that one. Like certain denominations actually are hip to that, like Jehovah's Witnesses. I remember the first time I was talking to a coworker I used to work with. And when she mentioned that, I was just like, oh, nice. I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, but there's a lot of other stuff you got to work on in that J-Dub doctrine. But they're like, we don't do it December 25th. We know that's not the birthday of Christ. Kind of like how Seventh-day Adventists know that the seventh day is the Sabbath, but then you question them on other stuff, and it's just like, nah, that's not it. That's not it, champ. So they get certain things, they get certain things right. But yeah, hit them with the heavy stuff first, just to make sure that they're aware of that. And the shock value will make the conversation last. That way they'll ask on or ask more questions, and we can fill in more of the dark spots in their mind. And just we might go over the things they already know, but then focus mainly on the things that they don't. So yeah, Paul did that a lot, and he's going to do this here in Colossians chapter 2. Let's read 16 and 17.
Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. It says, "Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of an holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days."
Right. So it says, "Let no man therefore judge you." Right. Remember, we do classes on this. We'll probably bring it back again. The Can We Judge class. It's another milk topic. But the short answer, without the scriptures, before we go into scriptures, the short answer is yes. We just can't condemn. But can we judge? Yes. And what's judging? Goes right back to what we were saying before. Words and deeds, right? Words and deeds define everybody. And especially the Most High especially cares about Israel being mindful of our words and deeds, right? Words being what? What you say, communication. Deeds, what you do, decision making, right? So anytime you say something or do something, that's a judgment, right? But anytime you hear that judge, people automatically go to the extreme. They go, oh, you can't judge me. Only God can judge me. And it's like, but hold on, you judge every day. You judge this, when it came to what you decide to put on today, right? You look at the weather, whether or not to take an umbrella, whether or not to put on your snow boots, right? So we got snow out here. That's all judgments. Oh well, yeah, but I never really thought of it that way. It's like, yeah, that's judging. So yeah, I can judge you right now based on what you're saying or doing. I just can't condemn you because I don't know your outcome. I don't know what you're going to do for the rest of your days. But what I can tell you is, brother, sister, stranger, if you keep eating that unclean meat like you are now, you keep celebrating those unclean holidays, not holy days, you keep doing that and Christ comes back, that's your ass. I can tell you that. But if you repent and stop doing that before that time, yeah, there's a chance. And that's a judgment too. So we can do that. But as far as, seeing somebody doing wickedness, wearing something they shouldn't wear, eating something they shouldn't eat, doing something they shouldn't do, and we just like 2/3. We can't do that, right? Because, we're going for face value. You know that person might be a heathen already, but then they look like Israel. So you got some heathen that look like heathen, but you go into their lineage just the other way around, So that's why, we have to, it says, judge righteous judgment, right? The spirit bear witness to our spirit that we're the children of God, right? As long as we do that and use the spirit as our guide, we'll find out who's who. Even if somebody does look like a stranger, and then you start talking to them, you realize, oh, on their father's side, they're actually Israel. Okay, boom, we could deal with you. And we see it time and time again, people who look like us, then we start breaking down the basics, nationality, you are who your father is, and you see it'll come out, right? Often sooner than later, right? When it comes to your father's side, the heathen, somehow they always know their father's side. Whereas with us, when it comes to the father's side of our family, it's just like, well, I know my daddy, but when it comes to my daddy's daddy, grandma didn't really tell me about him. Or stuff, it's got lost in the sauce somewhere when we moved here or moved there. So there's always like some kind of darkness on that. Whereas with the actual heathen, they look like us. They can tell you all about their father's side. It's like, okay, that's a sign right there that you're dealing with a stranger. They may look like us, they're heathen. See, I can say just in my short time being in the truth, I've experienced that on many occasions. It's so easy for them to point out, oh yeah, my father or my father's father or my father's father's father was this. And it's just like, oh, here's your Isaiah 14, right? Wherever you go from there. Leviticus 25, So yeah. So these are all judgments. Go ahead. Sorry.
And I was just saying, I just want to bring up the scripture you mentioned as far as we judge every day. 1 Corinthians 2:15.
Yeah, there we go. Mm-hmm.
And it reads, 1 Corinthians 2:15 reads, but he that is spiritual judges all things, yet he himself judges of no man.
I think it says is judged, right?
Oh, is judge of no man.
Right. So what's that saying?
He's saying that if you are we judge every day in terms of if you're spiritual, if you're in the word, you're going to judge, because if you know the word, you see somebody, like you just explained, somebody eating, whatever unclean meat, and you say, hey, brother, you shouldn't be doing that. That's against the law. That's when you're in the spirit, so you're actually judging that person, correcting them. You should point them in the right direction, what they should be doing. But when you're doing it, nobody's going to have to correct you or judge you, because you're already doing it.
That's it. That's the answer. That's the answer. And then I would like to set it up too, right? Because you use something that's commonly said in the world to set them up for a verse like this. Because say, well, I'm not religious. I'm not into religion. And you say, there you go. There you go. So will you consider yourself spiritual?
Yeah.
1 Corinthians 2:15. Got him. But then you could also, right? I always like to couple it too with the spiritual thing. Romans chapter 7. You can use this too. Romans chapter 7 and in verse 14 to go with the 1 Corinthians 2:15 also. If you could read that real quick.
So Romans 7.
Yeah, Romans 7 and verse 14. Yeah, the 1 Corinthians 2:15. That's when a lot of times they'll start questioning. Well, man wrote the Bible. I mean, come on. That thing was written so long ago. Do you really know what that really means? Because I've seen the look on faces when we read that. He that is spiritual judgeth all things. It's like there's no way around that. I can't judge. God, only God can judge. So Paul's a liar then. Oh, okay. Well, hold on now. See, the Bible written by man. See, we really don't know what it's saying. Are we sure that's what that means? And now all of a sudden we don't know what's going on. So you got that, Romans?
Romans chapter 7, verse 14. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin.
Right. So emphasis on the first precept for, what we're talking about in 1 Corinthians 2. We know that the law is spiritual, right? In case there's ambiguity around, judging and how we go about judging. We use this to show, here's what we use to judge. The Most High's law. So that's like your support scripture for 1 Corinthians 2:15, in case they want to wiggle out of that one. But back in Colossians 2, so we have some context behind judging. And as we already touched on, let no man therefore judge you in meat, what you eat, in drink, what you drink, or in respect of a holy day, or the new moon, which we're keeping now, or the Sabbath day, which we keep every week, right? And like you already touched on, Manashah, he that is spiritual judges all things, and he himself is judge of no man. It goes right along with this, because that man or woman is going to already be doing a new moon, doing the Sabbath, right? Doing the holy day, keeping a dietary law the way they're supposed to. So someone should have to come to you and tell you. But now verse 17 is interesting because it connects with what we read in Isaiah 66. Read that now.
Which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ.
Right? Which are a shadow of things to come, right? Because we're still in the last days. It was the last days then. We're still in the last days now, right? So we don't have everybody keeping the Sabbath, everybody keeping the new moon where they're supposed to, other holy days, right? It's just us that are scattered that are keeping this, right? Pockets of us here and there, right? 3 of us over here, 7 of us over here, 200 of us over here, 70 of us over here, 13 of us over here, 2 of us right here. Like we're all scattered in different branches. So it's not like a widespread thing, right? It's like an underground movement, as they might say. But it's the movement to end all movements, right? This is it. This is what it's always supposed to be. All right. So we'll go more into it in the classes during the week. Just want to read this real quick. Just said we have a set of names to go by. And I know you were talking about it also too, Khan Samat. And I'll touch on it a little bit too, from my angle. When we look at these prophecies that are coming to pass, especially since we see that the whole Ukraine is now like a hot topic again, just like it was back in, 2015? It was when it was a big deal, I think, around that time too, right? Like sometime in the middle of 2010s, right? But you're always going to have these proxy wars, whether they're televised or not, right? Because there's another thing that's going on right now too that the mainstream's not really talking about, but it was like some kind of coup, I think, in Afghanistan. And once again, you start following the money, you start seeing, once again, it's U.S. chess pieces versus Russia chess pieces. Because U.S. and Russia are the big boys, and they have nations that are with them or under them that they pretty much use to wage what they call proxy wars, right? Where it's like, I got my guy, you got your guy. We're not fighting directly, but we're using our pieces on the puzzle, on the chessboard to go to war with each other. And based on those outcomes, we either gain power or lose power, right? Whether it be money, resources, land, of course, the essential resource, which is the human resource, right? Which deals with the souls of men, right? Which is their mind. That's why there's so much effort put into, media and entertainment, right? Weaponized to be a tool for propaganda, to change hearts and minds, here and abroad. So this is Ezekiel. See, always remember those levels of power, right? Because anytime we look at any person from any country, our people or the heathen, we ask those basic questions. Look at those levels of power and see who controls. We can really determine what's going on there. Because you'll have people, especially our people from different, from the Caribbean or that, Hamites that come from like, any dark nation pretty much, including our people. They'll talk about, being independent or claiming independence, right? We got I was laughing earlier, so we got a Russian bot. As they say, Russian bots. We'll talk about, they'll talk about, yeah, we're independent now. We declare independence from, Her Majesty or the French or the Spanish or the Dutch or the Americans or whoever else, right? But then you look at those levels, right? You say, wait a minute, who controls your money? Whose face is on your money? Who's this person? And even the people that look like them, it's like, well, who actually controls the bank that mints the money? Do you guys run it? Oh, it's run by the IMF, the Federal Reserve. What? Wait a minute. You go a level above that, the things money can buy. Who controls your natural resources, right? Whatever you produce, whether it's oil or certain minerals or you grow certain things, right? You know, for growing certain things, providing certain raw materials. Who's in control of that? Is that your government controlling that? Do you have nationalization, which is I always joke. I say that's the international N word, right? Yeah, we got the N word as far as what they call us, right? But then you got the other N word, which is what the elite hate, which is nationalization. It's pretty much you taking your resource, whatever your country is, whatever you have in your region, and using that money, that revenue, for whatever that natural resource is and putting it back into your country without a corporation being involved, whether it be, you fixing up your roads, fixing up your schools, fixing up your hospitals, right? They hate when you do that.
So you see what happened to Venezuela that did that.
Mm-hmm.
Soon, I think Chavez that actually nationalized the oil.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You see what happened to him.
Right.
And what's going on in the country now. Like I said, they need big pieces of yellow. We need to get this thing back.
Right, which is funny you mentioned them because we're going to read another country that was in a similar boat back in the 50s. And they haven't forgot over there in Persia, what we now call Iran now, with I think his name is Mossadegh. He was democratically elected by the people, but he wasn't playing the way he wanted. He wasn't playing the way that the British wanted him to play, because they wanted to have a certain stake in Iran's oil because they're very oil rich. I think it was like BP or one of those companies that big oil companies, I think, in Britain. So that's when, with the help of the United States, they had a coup and then overthrew him because he was trying to nationalize that resource instead of letting British Petroleum and companies like that in there to capitalize off of the oil. So that's this game that they play. But anytime you want to take back control of any of those levels, we're going to control our money. We're going to control our resources. We're going to sit down and actually do deals, right? We're going to leverage what we have, what you have, and actually stick to that. That's going to be how we're going to do this. You're not going to dictate the terms to us. Anytime dark nations stand up like that and do that, it's just like, just mark the calendar and go, okay, see how many days before you start playing dirty, Then you got land power, of course, which is, your real estate. Right? And every nation knows, right? They say, oh, okay, what we see in the United States is top dog right now. We'll use their money for now, but we're not going to hold on to it. We're going to use their money at this level to actually get the resources to the next level and then get the land, right? And then control the water, which is like rivers and ports. Because, that's a lot of money for a government, especially like, any government makes a lot of money when it comes to transport of different goods. So that's why they'll try to take over, like, say, a port city and try to control what goes in and out and then tax that, right? As far as whatever comes in and goes in, it's a main source of income that can then go back to that country. So for a nation to control that themselves, all right, yeah, it works in their favor. But if someone else comes in and says, oh, no, we'll take care of that for you, but then we run it now, we own it now it's like you're subject to them. And then finally, people power, which is, what we were saying before, them trying to control the hearts and minds of men, women, and children, right, through propaganda, right? Human resources, right, whether it be a workforce to build different products or services, provide services, or whether it be an army to fight and defend the nation in case someone tries to come against it. But yeah, you go up and down those four. You look at any country, you can pretty much figure out what their situation is outside of the BS. Sometimes people will come at you with, like, oh yes, we declared our independence back in such and such year. We're doing our own thing, and then you start looking at those. Wait a minute, Her Majesty still controls your money. Wait a minute, you still got these other companies in your country, controlling your resource, right? Your land don't even belong to you anymore. The heathen came in and bought your land up. Well, other dark nations came in and bought your land, or Esau came in and bought your land from you, right? Which is supposed to be yours. And now you got to, pay them a tax for your stuff. Are you really independent? What's really going on here? Let's not play games, Let's not have bad faith arguments as you see on the internet with a lot of these different people going back and forth. So this is Ezekiel. Okay, good timing. Ezekiel chapter 38. Like I said, we'll as we go into the prophecy throughout the week, look at current events as things happen. Just keep an eye on these cast of characters, because these are the ones to watch. These are the ones to anticipate them making certain moves. And then when they do, you can say, oh yeah, I saw it coming, and I positioned myself accordingly, right? Whether it was investing, whatever it was I was doing. So this is Ezekiel 38. I'll start from 1. Just say come once you have it. So Ezekiel 38 and 1 says, and the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man. So the Most High is talking to Ezekiel. He's giving him another prophecy, as he did previous chapters about different nations. So now the focus is what? Set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. So now this chapter is focusing on Gog, the land of Magog, which Kansamak, I know you're going into that in your class too, as far as the Japhetic nations that were in these lands. And the Most High, it's only fitting to call them after the people that are supposed to be there anyway, right? As a frame of reference. But then we can't just look at where, we have to also look at when a prophecy takes place. So we got the where, and we should be aware of this, right? Knowing, okay, this is where Japheth went after the flood. This is where Shem went after the flood. Here's where Ham went after the flood. So for our, basis of understanding, knowing the truth, we can know what region. But now the when is talking about towards the last time. So we can look in that same place and look at who's there now and go, oh, okay, it's talking about what today they call Russia, right? Or recently USSR, right? So that's who's there now, even though Japheth was there first in large numbers. And I say that's still not there, maybe in small numbers, maybe tucked away. But now it's dominated by Esau. So this prophecy is dealing with them in the last times. It says in verse 3, and say, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Those are important names too, because you go into those names. One of those chief cities is actually the capital of Russia, right? Today it goes by Moscow, but before it was Meshech. And Tubal is not a big city, big city, but I think now it's called Tabasco. But Meshech is definitely a major city over there now, right? Their capital. Just like you'll see, we read about Nimrod, and it talks about the cities that he ran in the Middle East. And it'll say Erech, just, it's older spelling for what we now call Iraq, right? Before it was called Erech, which you read in Genesis 10. So sometimes the spelling might be different, but you do the history on the word and the name, you find out, oh, okay, it's just an older way of saying this same place. But this is important. Verse 4, I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws and will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Right, so we kind of see with Russia now, ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union, you see them taking more of a an industrial capitalist type approach to how they do things, right? But don't be deceived. Most guys letting us know what those we call communism. Those communist roots are not going to go away. Not just going to disappear, even though it may appear as though they're doing it. So just like any beast of burden that you control, like a horse or a beast, both sides talking about this powerful nation, like, oh, it's just a beast of burden to me. I can move them this way, move them that way. So both sides saying that it's going to come a time I'm going to bring them right back to that Soviet style way of doing things, right? To that communist warfare mode. And I'm going to make sure he has power enough to have all types of horses and horsemen, armor, bucklers, shields, all of them handling swords, right? Because even though they'll try to downplay Russia, right, and say, oh yeah, they're, the Cold War is over and they're no longer a threat, blah, 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 right? That couldn't be further from the truth, right? Especially when we talk militarily. They may talk in certain groups, they'll say, oh, when it comes to commerce, not much of a threat. Yeah, they have these certain exports like oil and stuff like that, but they're not really competing with, America or other countries that are part of the United Nations that, are part of the EU or whatever. But no, commercially and especially militarily, they still are a threat. We just can't be deceived because the media may not talk about it as much, try to downplay it. I still, I think I might have to go through my magazines, but I remember I bought a Nat Geo, like back in like the early 2010s, and they had a map at that time in this National Geographic magazine that pretty much showed all the nukes and where they were at as far as all different countries. And surprisingly enough, right, you had United States second place and Russia was first place. Like I said, this is back in the early 2010s, so I'm sure they've been busy since then. But it said the United States, I think, had 11,000 nukes. But then it said Russia had 16,000 nukes, right? And then it was so funny because you go through the list of, other countries, like China or France, whatever. And finally get to the bottom of the list. And it's so funny because the bottom of this list, as far as who has the least stockpile of nuclear, nuclear warheads and stuff, the two countries that were on the news the most were the ones at the very bottom. You had North Korea, second to last place with 3. And then you had Iraq was on the list at 0.
How did they make the list at 0? Oh, they couldn't find them.
Yeah, exactly. You guys might remember that Newsweek, right? That came out in the mid 2000s on the Bush years, right? Where it showed it looked like the Brady Bunch, right? You had like Condoleezza, Colin Powell, and Ashcroft, and Rumsfeld. All the guys that are part of the Bush cabinet, right? Making like a square, right? Like the Brady Bunch. And these big words in the middle of the magazine said, "We were wrong." I said, "Wow."
They weren't wrong.
So many billions of dollars and millions of lives later. Oops.
They weren't. That's a misleading vote. You should have said, "We lied."
yeah. But couldn't do that. They had to save face. But yeah, front page of Newsweek. We were wrong. I can't forget that magazine cover. I used to get it's right around the time when magazines were starting to really fall off, like late 2000s. I got like one of those free subscriptions. So it would send them to the crib. And I got it that month. I just looked at the cover and just like busting out laughing.
We were wrong after they killed it's over like 1 billion people died.
Mm-hmm. That's why I said this many billions of dollars later and this many millions of lives later, we were wrong. And you still got to this day, not to go too long into it, I know we're going to wrap up, but you got these different, event functions where you got the Bush cabinet that's still alive, like I think was it Rumsfeld? He was going to something to get some kind of award for whatever. And you got like vets coming and just people like, regular citizens coming to these things. You see them kind of going down the stairs into the, beneath the mezzanine, into these little fancy little areas. You got ESOL out there. Like I said, a lot of them are ex-military or, they're retired military. They're in there. They bust in the place. They got megaphones talking about murder, murder. You kill people. Like they put them on blast. And you see, they're kind of just like, they did it to Daddy Bush 41 before he kicked the bucket. He would go to certain functions. People put him on blast. Murder. You said us to war. It didn't matter. It's like they're going out with total dishonor. Anytime they go to these fancy little functions. Like I said, the one I saw recently was Rumsfeld. Like I said, this guy was a vet, an Iraqi vet. This guy was just cussing him out, like right there in the open. He had people holding him back, but he didn't care. He's just like, my men died because of your decisions, Like they say don't let it talk about it in the mainstream, but you just do a little search, you'll find it. And be like, damn, that's real bad. They'll just say, oh, this is how cookie crumbles. You work in politics, you can't make everybody happy. It's just like now you're getting older in age, and then now anywhere you go, you got to worry about somebody, slapping your face, punching you, vandalizing your stuff, because when you were in charge, you dropped the ball. It's crazy, man. But yeah, it says, I'll turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and will bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, and all of them handling swords. And now we get the list. Who's going to be on the side of Russia? or Gog Magog is the the actual region. Verse 5 says Persia, today known as Iran. That shouldn't be too much of a surprise, right? Because we know the United States rubbed Iran the wrong way, all types of ways, from Mossadegh in the 50s to what happened with the hostage situation was in like the late 70s, early 80s, right? That whole thing. I think Affleck made a movie about that. And then Iran-Contra scandal during the Reagan years, right? And everything that happened with that. So Iran knows what time it is, right? So they just biding their time. And they say, okay, we got an ally in Russia. When the time is right, we're going to retaliate. So you got Persia, Ethiopia, right? Because out of all the Hamite countries, right, most of them are pretty much take the knee to white supremacy. But Ethiopia, which isn't surprising because we know they have a rich history. We know them being the Babylonians. They were the big boys, back in the day. But they launched a successful guerrilla war against the Italians, got them the hell out of their country, right? Among other things. So Ethiopia has a certain sense of, pride about themselves. Not to say that, some of their leaders still, take a knee to, the UN and stuff and certain things, but there's going to come a situation, there's going to come a time where they're going to lean towards the East, the Eastern Bloc, and buddy up with Russia as opposed to the United States, because the United States didn't get them a bad deal. Italy being the forefront of that. So they're going to side with Russia. It says, and Libya. Libya is important too because I can see his face. Muammar Gaddafi. There we go. What happened with him? We're talking about the levels of power, right? What was he doing? He said, let's start with the first one. We're so resource rich. Why are we using their what do you call it? Their petrodollars. Let's create our own currency, right? Let's combine our resource. We're resource rich. Let's get together and create our own currency, right? I think it was like a gold dinar. I think he wanted to do something like that. Right. Because they had the resource to do it. And then shortly after that meeting, we got Hillary Clinton, right, on the evening news. We came, we saw, he died. Ha 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 ha. Right, the famous was it Abu Ghraib? What was it called?
Crazy.
They had a name for it. The something incident. It escapes me now. But either way, shortly after him trying to sit down with the other Hamite countries to take control, to get power back, especially when it came to the money and resources, Esau to get him out of there. They said, "Oh no, we gotta control the debt." Like our favorite movie, Samak the International, right? We gotta control the debt. They start controls everything. So we got them using their own currency, right? Backed by gold. It could easily become a threat to our petrodollar, right? You can't do that. We're gonna milk this petrodollar for all we can. So yeah, Libya didn't forget. They remember that wasn't that long ago. So we can see how this prophecy fits with them, where it's like, okay, the U.S. did that to us. All right, yeah, better the devil you know, right? We're gonna go on the side of Russia. So it's like all the blunders and mistakes that the United States and their allies are making throughout that part of the world, throughout the Africa and the Middle East and Southeast Asia and all these places where they got these dirty wars that they're waging, Syria, right? That's all. They're those nations are taking note of that and saying, okay, all right, right? Leaving a bad taste in everyone's mouth. When it comes down to it, these countries are going to what? Go on the side of the Russians. So that's the things we can look forward to. The stage pretty much being set, but we had the sneak preview with the prophecy to know the eventual outcome. Even though you had talking heads on, CNN, MSNBC, Fox saying, oh no, American hegemony was, still has power, it's going to go this way, we don't know enough about the situations, but we can see the outcome. But now verse 6 is really where we really need to check this out, because verse 6 is really the one that really gets you, because it says, so we can pretty much see Iran, Ethiopia, Libya, them having a problem with America and saying, we're going to buddy up with Russia, right, to try to get them back. But now check out verse 6. Gomer and all his bands. So Gomer is over there in Europe. The Japhet was there first, but today it's Esau there, and it's a country we know as France. That's who Gomer is. Then it says the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and all his bands. You go into Togarmah, that's going to what now we call Germany today. That same region. That's where the Japhet that was there at first was Togarmah. And the people that were in France at first, even before the Gauls, way before even the Gauls, were Gomer, right? So now France and Germany, I thought they were part of the EU, right? They're the ones, anytime countries in the EU are in trouble, what do? They always lean on Germany first and France second, right? To say, you guys are doing pretty good on your books. Give us a little loan, help us out, right? Because this euro is trash for us, right? Our whole economy is collapsing. Bail us out, Germany. Bail us out, France. They're getting tired of that. They're like, listen, man, we didn't have to build ourselves back after World War I and World War II. You guys still got your hand out. I still remember this too, because remember this was in the it was in I think a Wall Street Journal. It was right around the time I think when Ukraine was going on before, and it was Obama was president, and it was when the Ukraine thing sparked up before, and he was leaning on Angela Merkel, right, saying, yeah, you and other the EU countries, you guys should embargo Russia because of what's going on in Ukraine, right, for us. And it was like, you read like the article, she's like, why? We got a good thing going on with Russia, right? Because you go into the trade between Germany and Russia, they trade resources with each other, just like the French and the Russians have a certain trade agreement as well when it comes to oil, other things like that. And she was reluctant. She's like, you might have a problem with Russia, but we don't. We got a good thing going on with Russia, right? Your enemy is not my enemy at this point. So that something like that could be easily glossed over. When we see the prophecy, it just gives more evidence to show, damn, even countries like Germany and France, the main people that keep the EU going, if they leave the EU and say we're going with Russia, it's a wrap.
But you already see it already because Germany, France, and them, they're getting natural gas from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
The pipeline is running from there.
Yep.
So if the U.S. is trying to cut off Russia from the SWIFT system, right? This is how I believe that they paid Russia is through that system. So they can't.
For everybody who doesn't know, what's the short version? What's the SWIFT system?
System is a system that we use to transfer money.
Okay.
Right. So, which is whenever you're using the U.S. dollar, you have to use the SWIFT system.
Okay.
It's the currencies that's in play for all transactions that's done in U.S. dollar. It has to go to that system.
Okay.
So, and as you see in the news, Biden and them talking about they want to stop Russia, stop them from using the SWIFT system. That's why Russia and China set up their own payment system.
Mm-hmm.
So they pay each other to do that.
Right.
So they don't have to use the American system.
Right.
So that's one of the sanctions they're discussing to put on Russia to stop them from defending their border.
Right, their border. It's like it's Ukraine. America, you're all the way over here. What business you got all the way over there? But you're in Russia's backyard, though. Not to say Russia's the hero, but it's just like, why are you here too? So yeah, this is all just breeding ground for what's to come next. Because you don't hear about them talking about it a lot in the main, American media, but the BRIC, or now the BRICS, right? They might have added some other people on that roster, but I know last time I checked, it was the B was Brazil, the R was Russia, the I was India, the C was China. I think the S was like South Africa. They kind of came on board afterwards. So that's like you could say the answer, or like the counterbalance to the United Nations. They said, let's do our own, like you said, set up our own pay system to do exchange, and not go through them. So now the BRICS is pretty much what this is pretty much what we're reading right here. You see what it's talking about, the other side, and those who are eventually going to ally themselves with Russia in the end.
See, I just heard this theory just the other day about it was Russia that's behind Bitcoin, right?
Okay.
Take down the U.S. system because Bitcoin is a system that um, nobody really control it. It's all in the hand of the user.
Mhm.
So the IMF, the World Bank, they can't really do anything. They can't really stop it. So that's it's just a theory. And just to take, because if everyone start using this Bitcoin as the world reserve currency, all this money printing, all that would stop.
Yeah, so it behooves them to corner the market by trying to buy it up themselves, right? Maybe even overprice it, but
Buy
but for
what?
buy up all the Bitcoin because
It's on a certain amount.
Right.
Yeah, they can buy it. Yeah.
that's like their move pretty much. Because like you said, the technology is actually designed in a way where you can't. It's very difficult to manipulate. Like you got to be a expert hacker try to hack this thing. The way it is, like you said, the blockchain and all that. But yeah, that's pretty much the only move, and probably overprice it, right, to get it. People have to be like, people that have the Bitcoin now have to agree. They might say, yeah, I'm trying to buy my Bitcoin for, way over what's worth. Not for sale. Come on. Sorry, I'm not selling it. Then what do they do? But, that's if, certain Esau sticks to their guns, because definitely Esau against Esau when you see a lot of this stuff. And you got other dark nations, even us included, kind of getting in on it. You know what I mean? As far as getting our little chunk out of the pie, or I should say slice. Right? Some dark nations have a larger chunk of that pie than others. But yeah, like I said, we'll see where it goes. But in the end, we know ultimately that the Third World War is coming. That's for sure. And we know for sure, and you have to be an economic expert to know that the U.S. dollar has had it. It's out of here. It will crash. It's just a matter of time.
Could you imagine if they actually go and say, all right, we cut you off from the SWIFT system, and Russia come out and say, all right, we're going to use Bitcoin. Bitcoin go to the roof.
Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, and I can see Putin kind of just sitting there smiling like, because he knows what time it is. Him being ex-KGB and all. Guns. So let's see. Read verse 7. Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. Right? So I'll stop there, verse 7. Like I said, we'll probably touch more into detail during the week. But yeah, that's the key verses you want to read to kind of get the picture for the Third World War, and to get pretty much who's going to be on the other side, who's going to be on the other team. So keep an eye on those particular countries when it comes to their what you call international relations or trade they do. Look at their top trading partners, whether it be Iran or whether it be Ethiopia or Libya. Look at France and Germany too, right? Who their top trade partners are, and what resources, what products, what services they're trading in, right? That bringing them most revenue, because we know in the end, and this is just America, because America's always been this way, right? America is just one big market. It's a government, but it's a market. So nations, they move on interests. They're motivated by interests, right? You're going to see a decline of this patriotism that, a lot of countries boast, right? I'm this country. I come from this, heritage, whatever. You're going to see interest. You've kind of seen it already, but interest is going to kind of take the reins, because that's the standard America set. Now in the kingdom, yeah, we're going to have nation states again, but there's this move away from nation states, right? Which Esau wants to try to abolish, but it has to come here first when it comes to the ideology, right? Disassociate with that, but then to get people to move based on just interest alone. But for a lot of nations, it's still kind of lower priority. But that's America through and through. That's why anytime you read about Babylon and Revelation, and like I said, we're going through this during the classes during the week. You always you hear about the kings, mourning and the kings being overthrown, but you see emphasis on merchants weeping bitterly. The merchants are going to be, crying aloud and pulling their hair out, this, that, and the third, because the scriptures already know what America is. It's a big market, right? That's why it's compared to old Babylon, which did a lot of commerce, or Egypt, same thing. Sodom and Gomorrah, or even being compared to Tyrus, which is just Tyre and Zidon. What was Tyre and Zidon? Hamite countries that were what? They had major trade ports on their coasts, right? So when we see it being called, Tyrus and the prince of Tyrus and the judgment upon them, we see how it aligns with Esau and through, who, for some reason or another, decides or thought that it was a bright idea to pretty much emulate these Hamite nations that fell. He's pretty much taken on the spirits of all those Hamite nations that were chief in the earth, and pretty much brought them into his person, his way of doing things. But the way they fell, Esau's going to fall the same way and even harder. Thus saith the Lord. So that's the big picture. And we can go into, the minute details. We look at country by country. But yeah, so this is the teams, right? Like, back in the day, shirts and skins, right? Playing pickup basketball, it's like, I want you, right? You playing, ball in the summertime, right? So these are the bricks right here. These are the ones going to ally themselves to Russia. And keep a close eye on verse 6 when it comes to France and Germany, because most of your mainstream media is not going to see it coming. They're going to be so surprised that the likes of France and Germany will want to pass up their UN position, their EU position, and go in league with Russia. But I want to go with the Most High, as opposed to what these so-called analysts say.
No. Okay.
So we'll end here, so we make good time, about 2 hours. Nice. So we'll say Shar Chadash, we don't want to go too late, which just means Happy New Moon, 11th new moon in particular. Definitely continue to watch and pray, as we're talking about now. Take a closer look at these countries. Just look them up, online, see what kind of stats you can find on. Look at little pie charts you can probably see when it comes to, who these countries trade with. You might even be able to decipher some prophecies of your own, right? To say, okay, did a little more digging into Iran and their trading partners and their imports and exports. Here's what I found. Or I did a little more digging into Ethiopia, their imports and exports. Here's what I found, their trading partners, right? Some of the things might jump right out at you, like, oh, why am I not talking about this in the media? Like, this is a sure thing, but it just hasn't kicked off yet. But we're right on the precipice. Like I said, that's the power of prophecy. So continue to watch and pray. Look forward to the end time. Look forward to Christ coming back as things get worse and worse. We know we're getting closer and closer. And as horrible as it's going to be for so many of our people, that's why it's so important for us to give them that warning, to say, look, Christ on his way back. The reason why these things are happening here and abroad is because of that. Get yourself right. Get your body, soul, and spirit right, according to Christ, so you can be protected from these times. So that, like we started off tonight, you can foresee the evil and hide yourself and not get caught out there, right? And be under the wings of the protection of the Most High. So enjoy the rest of the new moon. Hopefully you can enjoy the feast from now till sundown tomorrow. Oh, Shalom.
Hey, Shalom. Hey, you said Meshach and Tubal were Moscow and who?
Tabasco.
Tubal.
To
You said what do you reference them as the countries in Russia?
right. That's who they are.
Yeah, just repeat the references for those two countries.
Oh, it's referring to cities or regions, namely Moscow.
The cities in Russia, right?
Right.
And that was Meshach was Moscow, you said?
Yes.
And what was Tubal?
Tubasco.
That's the city of Russia?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the water.
Khan, Ayandabar. Yeah, like I said, the main important thing to really take away from this is that this is indeed Russia. We want to look at those allies. That's what you want to really focus your research on. these countries that are going to ally themselves, if not already, with Russia. Predict those movements and operate accordingly. Or if you're getting into investments like some of us are, maybe they'll make a little something even before this whole thing goes down. You can position yourself accordingly. All right. So once again, enjoy the rest of the new moon. Hope you can keep it holy. If you have to work, try to stay in the spirit of the holy day still and just apply grace. And we'll talk to you about it in the Tuesday class that we normally have. So Ashar Kadash, once again, happy 11th of moon. And with that, we'll do the closing prayers. So Ashar Kadash wa Layla Tawa.
Shakadash, Salah Tamah.
Khan. Barakatah Yahweh by Shemi Hawashai, Asharanathan Nawa Paria Gapan Thwada Aman, La Yahweh by Shemi Hawashai, Ath Yasha Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai with Israel. Amadwa, Paniwa Yerushalayim, stand and face Jerusalem. Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, Babakushai, Shemai, Lanawa, Aita, Yemyan, Aita, Shalak, Ma'ika Allah, Wa Alahayim, Tazwadakim, La, Shemar Ayel, Barak, Rapah, Magan, Wa Chazayak, Banya, Yasha Allah, Wa Shalak, Lanawa, Rabian, Kakama, Rabian, Da'aik, Rabian, Bayanad, Rabian, Sabalanwa, Rabian, Amawan, Rabian, Aqua, Rabian, Ahabian, Rabian, Haganah, Rochanaya, Wasalak, Kal, Katayanawa, La Akim, Wa Akiwa, Wayasha'ala, Tamyad, Waiwalam, Ba'asham, Yahawashai, Thawada, Aman. English translation, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai,
Please listen to us now, right now. Send Mike on the righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers, sisters in Israel, always and forever, in the name of Yahushua, thank you, so be it. Four Corners Prayer. Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahushua, Barak Nawa, Wiyasha'Allah, Wabafia Saparim, Shema, Yasharele, Yahweh, Allah, Yahweh, English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahushua, bless us in Israel in the house of books. And then we said, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Prayer for the food. Yahweh, Gadawo, Ba'asham, Adawanya, Yahushua, Babakusha, Barak, Ma'akal, Yanawa, Shatayawa, Yanawa, Yayan, Yanawa, Lacham, Yanawa, Shakara, Yanawa, Zachar, Shah, HaChadash, Ba'asham, Yahushua, the water, Amen. So that's it. So we'll say Shah Chadash once again. Wa Laila Tawab. Have a blessed day from sundown to sundown till Tuesday sundown, which will be the end of the new moon. Laila Tawab. I think I put it on 80, but I guess it's not cooking. It used to be real warm in the back too.